Hi. Have y'all seen Stomp the Yard? Raise your hand if you have. All right, listen up closely because I'm going to talk quick. Stomp the Yard was an all that movie. It was full of eye candy. Hands down galore. Those brothers, the brother that, the main character himself, I can't remember the dude's name, but the guy, a DJ, who went from the hood to the college, from hood to the campus, hot tea. Both of the fraternity heads. They whoever was doing casting for that movie. You would look through the crowd and just see people. It was just like just beautiful, 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 beautiful people. So for that, I really love the movie, and I also love what's interesting about it is if you look at the color. How it was faded, how it was more chromatic, less intense. This also, I think, really added to the narrative of the movie. It really brought you in because you didn't feel like you were being sort of, had these images thrown at you, but they were being uh, placed. And then you could then kind of join them and sympathize with different characters. And I think that's what I like about um, movies that really develop, different characters. If you think of how many different characters had their own story. There was his story, and Chris Brown's story. His story was gone. He was the ethereal guy who just appeared over and over and over and over, and I'll come back to that. You have his aunt's story, and so she married a guy who didn't go to college but worked at the college. Um, you have the college head who doesn't want his daughter to repeat the same mistake for a woman that he obviously hasn't even gotten over, of switching classes. She's the Jack and Jill class, and he's the, as one of the crump dancers, that woman who was in Miss Prissy, who was in the first scene, is what she said in Rise, they're hood rats. They're gutter kids. That's what she said in Rise when she was being interviewed. The woman, that girl with the long, who was on their team in the beginning of the movie when they were in the hood and fighting and wanted money and all that thuggish shit was going on. So he moved from that world to the campus, and immediately, he started to find that he had a different set of resources around him, and that's what's interesting is to see essentially his ascension, his class shift. Now, with all that in mind, bearing all that in mind, is two things that I want to talk about that I take issue with that movie. A, did you notice that the light skin, dark skin thing, the Disney thing where the dark skin characters are evil, patriarchal, like I'm gonna get you. So basically, I can't remember the dude's name, the one that could dance, the head of the red frat, the frat wore red, the 7-year champs, that team, their step leader. So this guy, he's a hottie now, but he's like dark skinned. He's the middle class guy who's the bourgeois guy who tries to encroach upon her, who's going to graciously accept the pussy that her daddy, the only other dark skinned person, willingly gives over. That's that's Mary. So God says, please take this young virgin and bear many sons. And, her life is really sacrificed. Her life is just sad and tragic. But, she's well taken care of. She's been, we revere her because she did the right thing. So she has that choice before her. And that is Romeo and Juliet. That's interesting that you find the Christian narrative repeated in our fictional fantasies. And I'm not saying that someone like Shakespeare had this specific idea, or the group of people who are believed to be writing under the pen name of Shakespeare had this idea to put forth a Christian narrative, any more than the writer of this movie, Stomp the Yard, had the specific idea to put forward a Romeo and Juliet narrative. But that's essentially what's happening here. April, Juliet even has long locks. She could pop. She could pop now. Y'all saw her pop. I guess she's supposed to be the AKA. Um, she was basically being told, Juliet Capulet was being told by her father, you cannot date that boy, you must date that boy. Romeo, you have, if you a thug, come up with an upper class girl, a light skinned girl, you better be, you better be smooth. You got to have moves. How many stories do we have of this lower class dude winning over the higher class snobby dude? That narrative is in so many movies. I just saw that. Where did I just see that? Spider-Man. Where else? I specifically just saw this with an all black cast. Well, y'all can write in and remind me. But that narrative is so much repeated, and so I'm not saying that everybody wants to make their own Romeo and Juliet story, and not just the one that Aaliyah did with Jackie Chan, but that these are the kinds of fantasies that come from a dominant ideology that says that, and I'm about to get real deep on you too, because it goes back further than that. But it says, how power is to be used. It is the narrative of patriarchy. I think it underlines all of this. That A, men are empowered. B, for the son to gain power, he has to slay the father. There's Oedipus for you. Got you. You didn't think I was going to bring in Oedipus, did you? So these narratives even bring in, I'm explaining a little more clearly. So, to slay the father, to gain power in the patriarchy, there has to be this sacrifice, and there has to be this slaying. Even bloodshed itself is seen as the sacrifice that men will make, and of course, women's sacrifice will always be for hearth and home. That's the sacrifice that she's asked to make. So April, she just, you go into big dude's house, he'll take care of you. Look at this big rock he's placing on your hand. Girl, don't you know you don't have to work? All you have to do is drink lattes in the daytime. You can pour a little rum in them if you want to. Meet the girls, raise the kids, sweep the house, host the dinners. You know what I mean? And when he gets ready to get on top of you and do his business, turn into a freak, girl. Turn into a freak. Let him pull that weave out. All that stuff. That's all she got to do. That's all she got to do. But when Romeo comes and you choose love, well, we know what happened in Romeo and Juliet. That didn't end lightly. So that's why we have, a lot of the narratives of overcoming, with sacrifice. Okay, so they're both going to have to work if she's with this dude. Already, she got to get a job, But also, does she then move away from the Jack and Jill circle? Does she then maybe choose an urban life that provides different options? Do they then start traveling around the world? Do they then start doing all these, things that bourgeois people don't do? And it's scary to think that she might give that up, what she would give that up for. But for a man, this is where the guy comes in. This is his sacrifice. He's online. He goes through this process of where he says, I'm going to do this. I'm going to walk through the valley. I'm not going to give away too much. But those of you who are Greek will understand. The sands burn. And there's another Jesus narrative that we even purposefully bring in. So there you go. Patriarchy at its best. And capitalism has only usurped that trade and ridden it to prominence, So I think there's always a choice that we have. Do we worship God or do we worship Jesus? If you're going to be Christian, to put it in those terms. For Buddhists, we would say something very different. But since the majority of you listen to this will be Christian, do you worship power or do you worship redemption? The power of redemption, the power of dialogue. All these things that Obama is showing, the power of love. The power of listening. Do you worship that or do you worship, we got him?